In the last video, I talked about assessing the economic value of open data. And in this final video for this module, I'd like to talk a little bit about the uses of open government data for social good. So just as open data clearly has major applications and major benefits for the economy and for business, it's equally clear that the value of open data for social good is very large. Just as a reminder, I talked at the very beginning in the first video about how the open data movement really began with a focus on good government accountability, and transparency, which is certainly a social good. But what we've seen more and more is that open data from government can be used as a resource not only for economic projects, but for social projects, whether they're about fighting hunger, improving education, improving infrastructure, many other things that are really in the interest of the public at large and citizens at large. And we're seeing tremendous applications of open data in this way as well. So one of the readings for this week is a blog post that my colleagues wrote at the Center for Open Data Enterprise about a project that we've run with the group Open Data for Development called the Open Data Impact Map. This now has, in the blog post, it was more than 1,500. It's now more than 1,700 examples of the use of open data around the world. And as you'll see if you spend some time on the map, many of these are businesses, but many others are nonprofits, other kinds of research organizations that are using open data in a large number of ways. Well, one way to characterize the social uses of open data is to look at them through the lens of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These are goals that were developed in 2015. They are aspirational goals that all member nations of the U.S. have signed on to, and they outline a very ambitious agenda to be achieved by the year 2030, to reduce or eliminate hunger and poverty, to fight climate change, to improve cities, many ways to just improve the quality of life on the planet for people in all countries around the world. So one of the websites that's in your readings or your explorations, I guess, if it's a website for this week, is the website of the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data. I think it's interesting that this organization was really developed in the first place very much around using data to achieve these sustainable development goals. And if you look at the website and one of the pages I've linked to in the readings, you'll see that they have a very clear and fairly extensive breakdown of the ways that data can support the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs as they're called. So this organization really builds very direct links between these global goals and the need to use certain kinds of data to achieve those goals. Back in your earlier module on data as a government asset, one of the readings was about A World That Counts, the UN project on the data revolution. That approach, also taken by the UN, is very much tied to the UN's approach to the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Global Partnership on Sustainable Development Data is one of the organizations that's trying to tie those together. Well, this sounds kind of abstract, or it can, but one of the very interesting things to look at, I think, in this context is the last website in this week's readings, Resource Watch. This was just launched by the World Resource Institute and several partners. It was actually just launched very recently, at the beginning of April this month. And this is a really remarkable site that has taken one of the major sustainable development goals, which is fighting climate change, and put together a very extensive, very sophisticated, beautifully visualizable and visualized website that makes it possible for researchers, national governments, anybody with an interest in climate change to access all kinds of data in very analyzable ways to address a number of questions and a number of problems that come up around climate change. So I think Resource Watch is very much worth studying for two reasons. One is climate change is arguably the biggest problem and challenge that we face as a planet, and anything that can be done to apply data to that problem is very much worth noting. But in addition, one can imagine taking the same kind of approach to data for hunger, data on poverty, data on any number of these kinds of issues that are addressed by the SDGs, and seeing what can be done when you really make a concerted, well-funded, and collaborative effort to put data to use to address these problems. And I think we're going to be seeing more and more the power of data for social good on a global scale as we see projects like this come together.